A soul radiating a purple-gold glow suddenly appeared. The aura emanating from him was that of the early stage of the ascension of the Great Tao. After he appeared, he waved his right hand, and his body immediately solidified from an illusion into reality. Having summoned this ascension soul, Wang Lin didn't hesitate. He quickly retreated, fully aware that this soul of ascension wouldn't be enough to defeat his opponent. This was something Wang Lin knew very well. Oh, you do have some tricks up your sleeve. No wonder you were able to seize the memory inheritance when you were still in the core formation stage. However, as for this item, had I not obtained that drop of blood, perhaps I could have delayed you a little. But now that I have it, this item cannot stop me by even a single step. Tuo Sin's crimson hair fluttered as if blown by an invisible wind, and a domineering aura immediately radiated from his body. Tuo Sin burst into wild laughter, his body moving as he stepped forward. At the same time, he raised his right fist and threw a punch forward. This punch appeared ordinary, but both Yun Kazi and Zakazi had grim expressions. They had been severely injured by a similar punch from him earlier, their bodies sent flying, forced to retreat. The Ascension Soul's eyes flashed with a ghostly light. It reached out into the air, and instantly a purple spear materialized in its hand. With a flick, it hurled it forward. At the same time, the soul retreated, grabbing Wang Lin and vanishing in a flash. This was Wang Lin's true objective. He didn't summon the Ascension Soul to fight but to use its strength to speed up his escape. The spear tore through the air, colliding with Tuo Sin's fist. A thunderous roar echoed as the spear shattered, cracks spreading across its length. In the blink of an eye, the spear collapsed completely. Tuo Sin remained unmoved, his eyes coldly sweeping toward the spot where Wang Lin had vanished, a cruel smile curling at the corner of his mouth. He raised his right hand, clenched it into a fist, and shouted, "Return." A massive vortex suddenly appeared in the sky, slowly spinning. An unimaginable pulling force immediately spread across the entire heavens and earth. Wang Lin, in his flight, instantly felt his body uncontrollably dragged backward. In the blink of an eye, he was pulled back 100 feet. "I told you, you can't escape." Tuo Sin took a step forward, closing the distance of 100 feet, and threw a punch. Wang Lin's face turned pale, a sense of imminent death filling his heart. The feeling was overwhelming. A flash of determination crossed his eyes. As he focused his mind, the Ascension Soul suddenly turned around. Its hands waved in front of it, and a strange seal appeared in the air. Once the seal formed, an astonishing aura radiated from it. The Ascension Soul's eyes flickered, and its entire body immediately transformed into a black beam of light, merging into the seal. In that instant, the seal turned pitch black, like ink. "Shatter!" A hoarse voice echoed from within the Ascension Soul. The shattering seal art. All the souls exploded simultaneously, generating an unimaginable shockwave. A destructive aura emanated from the seal. It was faint, but for the first time, Tuo Sin's expression changed. He immediately retracted his fist, trying to retreat. But it was too late. Within the billion soul banner, countless souls, along with many prime souls, exploded together. This explosion was far more violent than the one triggered when the Ascension Soul self-destructed. The black seal shattered in a flash. Just a few feet before Tuo Sin, a wave of black ripples spread out at lightning speed. But strangely, it didn't disperse in all directions. Instead, it rushed directly toward Tuo Sin. A sound that shocked the heavens and earth, reverberating through the entire Vermilion Bird Tomb, rang out. In this moment, not only within the Vermilion Bird Tomb but across the entire Vermilion Bird Star, everyone could sense the powerful aura of destruction, an unstoppable force that shattered the heavens and earth. Tuo Sin's figure flew back like a meteor, crashing. 100 feet away, his body disintegrated, the small monkey inside him dimming, its eyes closing in death. Yet, the red glow it formed flickered briefly before condensing once again. Though it seemed like it could vanish with a gust of wind, the aura of a formidable being radiated from it. "I didn't expect. You actually have such a treasure. Wang Lin, I underestimated you." Tuo Sin's voice emerged from the illusory figure, filled with a deep, chilling aura. Within the billion soul banner, apart from the four main souls pursuing Lu Mei, all the others had shattered in self-detonation. Yet, none of this was enough to obliterate Tuo Sin's remaining fragment of consciousness. His strength was truly terrifying. Wang Lin's heart sank as he sighed softly, lifting his right hand to touch his brow. He wasn't sure if the heaven-defying space could escape Tuo Sin's pursuit. He had no confidence. "This time, I want to see where you can run to." Tuo Sin's body began to solidify as he took a step forward. But just at that moment, Suddenly, a long rainbow shot up from the sea below and leaped out. Its speed was so fast that in the blink of an eye, it appeared 10 zhang away from Tua's senator. The rainbow dissipated, revealing a man with a mask. He extended his right hand and pressed it toward Tua Sin, his eyes glowing with a strange light as he softly uttered, "Seal." Tua Sin's face changed, and he stared at the man, retreating once again. The masked man's eyes flashed. 5 rays of light suddenly flashed from his 5 fingers, transforming into 5 iron chains that gleamed and moved wildly. In the blink of an eye, these 5 chains trembled and turned into 5 massive seals. As they overlapped, they suddenly surged toward Tua Senior. "If you weren't injured just now, I wouldn't be able to seal you. But now, with the self-detonation of your prime soul, I can seal you." The overlapping seals flashed and relentlessly pursued Tua's senator. His face changed drastically, and he retreated once again, shouting, "Who are you?" The masked man remained silent, his strange gaze flickering. Suddenly, the seals pierced through the void, disappearing. But in an instant, they reappeared behind Tua Sin, moving at incredible speed, and stamped onto his back. Tua Sin quickly looked up, and a red mist erupted from his mouth. His body began to slowly dissipate, eventually vanishing entirely. However, the red mist above the sky did not disperse. It swirled and churned, eventually taking the form of Tua Sin's face, staring at the man and roaring, "No matter who you are, the day I break free, I will kill you." The red mist swirling stopped, and then it turned into countless red crystal lights that scattered like red rain, falling around. The masked man reached out his right hand, and amidst the dissipating red crystals, points of white light shone. These white lights gathered together, forming a white crystal that landed in his hand. At the same time, the iron sword that Qian Feng had summoned emerged from the void, and the man grasped it in his hand. He examined the sword carefully before storing it away. Wang Lin stared at the masked man, his heart shaken. At this moment, not only him but everyone around was focused on this person. Yun Keizi's eyes showed overwhelming shock. He immediately recognized the man as a cultivator, but his cultivation level, he couldn't see through it. Even a cultivator at the later stages of the Prime Soul, Yun Keizi could usually discern something about their power. But this person, his cultivation was far beyond the Prime Soul stage. At this thought, Yun Keizi trembled in fear. Zhao gaze hardened as he fixed his eyes on the man, especially the white crystal in his hand. Recalling how the man had gathered the crystal from the dissipating void, Zhao body shook, and his eyes showed disbelief as he muttered, You are." The masked man sighed lightly, glanced at Zhao, and said indifferently, "Zhao, do you realize your mistake?" "Yiwuyo," Yun Keizi murmured, staring at the man. "Do not guess recklessly, Yun Keizi, he is not the Zhuke of this generation." Zhao immediately interrupted Yun Keizi and respectfully addressed the man, saying, "I greet the Alliance Emissary. I know my fault." "Alliance Emissary." "Cultivation Alliance Emissary." Yun Keizi gasped in astonishment. "Zhao, your lifespan is at its end. You should return. There is no need to linger. Trying to destroy the Star Cultivation Crystal is a grave taboo within the Cultivation Alliance. Given the circumstances, I will not pursue this matter. Go back." The masked man spoke calmly and composedly. Zhao looked bitter and silently nodded. After a moment, his eyes flashed, and he spoke, "Emissary, I will return, but as for the Immortal Remnant clan, I will handle it," the masked man replied. Zhao took a deep breath, sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and wore a faint smile at the corner of his mouth as he returned to his place. His lifespan was already near its end, and he had borrowed Qian Feng's remaining years. Now, upon seeing the Cultivation Alliance Emissary, he had no choice but to give up everything. As he closed his eyes, he vaguely recalled the records left behind by the previous Zhuke, Yiwuyo. It was said that on the Zhuke star, an emissary of the Cultivation Alliance was stationed at all times, with each generation succeeding the last, their existence hidden deeply, deeply. Wang Lin's gaze flickered, and he slowly retreated. At that moment, the masked man turned and looked at Wang Lin, smiling, "Big Ox brother, don't you remember me?" Wang Lin froze for a moment, staring at him. After a while, his eyes suddenly flashed with realization. The masked man placed his right hand on the mask and slowly removed it, revealing his true face. "It's you." Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. "Many years have passed, Big Ox brother, but your charisma remains unchanged. However, I have one question that puzzles me. Why did you refuse to become the next Zhao? On Zhuke Star, In the demonic sea within the ancient god ruins, atop a giant stone spire, Tuasin suddenly looked up, a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. But this feeling quickly vanished, replaced by an overwhelming red light. You may have broken my split consciousness, but you cannot stop me from escaping. A drop of dark crimson blood slowly appeared in front of him. Tuasin stared at the blood, a sinister look emerging in his eyes. With this, it won't be long before I can leave here. Wang Lin, I'll spare you this time. Next time, you won't escape. It is indeed Imo, my brother Daniel. You haven't answered my question. The burly man took off his mask, revealing the same person who had once debated the path of life and death with Wang Lin in the rainy night ancient temple. My aspirations are not tied to the vermilion bird, Wang Lin said flatly. At this moment, his heart was clear. The white crystal stone that was about to fly toward him probably had a great connection with this person. Emoji glanced at Wang Lin, shook his head, and sighed, such a pity. Since my brother Daniel has made his decision, I will not try to persuade you any longer. His eyes suddenly showed a moment of confusion. After a brief pause, his gaze regained its sharpness. This time, his eyes fell on Yunkazi. The Immortal Remnant clan, 1/3 of the Vermilion Bird Star's range, is yours. But every 1,000 years, you must offer a tribal skull from someone of the 9 leaves or higher. Yunkazi, do you agree? Yunkazi's heart was bitter. He had no right to refuse. The person before him represented the Cultivation Alliance, and the Immortal Remnant clan could not resist. He nodded heavily, his appearance suddenly aging, and his eyes grew dim. At that moment, huge waves suddenly rose from the seabed, and the collapse of the Vermilion Bird tomb began anew. Amidst the raging sea waves, Emoji raised his right hand, and the white crystal stone in his palm emitted a blinding white light. In an instant, the light illuminated the entire world, spreading into the Vermilion Bird tomb, then further extending as if 10,000 horses were galloping, quickly lighting up the whole tomb. Merge, Emoji whispered. At the sound of the word, the moment of collapse halted. The pieces of land that had turned to nothingness reformed, and the dimensional rifts that had been torn apart quickly closed. 10 breaths later, the entire Vermilion Bird tomb was completely restored. Emoji glanced at the white crystal stone in his hand, then threw it into the sea, where it sank and disappeared. He then pointed toward the place where the Vermilion Bird Patriarch had transcended. A heart-shaped crystal slowly floated out from the top of Yunkazi's head. The crystal had deep cracks all over it, looking as if it could shatter at any moment. However, at this moment, the cracks bizarrely began to close. After 3 breaths, the heart-shaped crystal returned to its normal state, with no traces of cracks. The next Vermilion Bird Patriarch. Emoji's gaze swept away from Wang Lin and fell on Zhao Wutai's face. He paused slightly. Zhao Wutai's heart raced, his body trembling with excitement. The Azure Dragon bloodline. Indeed a suitable candidate. But, unfortunately, the cultivation is still at the infant metamorphosis stage. Emoji's gaze shifted away from Zhao Wutai, and this time, his eyes turned to Zixin, who was meditating beside him. Furnace Cauldron. By coincidence, it was taken by force, quite rare. Emoji's eyes flashed as he was about to make a decision. Zhao Wutai smiled bitterly, sighing inwardly. He knew that with his current cultivation, he had no hope of becoming the Vermilion Bird Patriarch. Furnace Cauldron. This matter is strange. Wang Lin's eyes flickered. He had some past entanglements with Zixin, and their relationship leaned more toward animosity than friendship. The changes within Zixin were evident to him, and he immediately saw the problem. Zixin was the Furnace Cauldron of Qianfeng. He had killed Qianfeng, but for some unknown reason, it had empowered this woman. Wang Lin couldn't understand it. Although he had practiced for many years, he didn't remember any magical technique that could achieve such an effect. Such mysterious abilities always came with fatal flaws. Wang Lin glanced at Yunkazi, and in his heart, he was certain that this all had something to do with him. Emissary. Wang Lin hesitated for a moment before speaking. Emoji looked at Wang Lin. Not yet in the infant metamorphosis stage doesn't mean it's impossible to reach it in this lifetime. Wang Lin said thoughtfully. As soon as his voice fell, Zixin, who had been meditating with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. Her cold gaze locked onto Wang Lin. From her, Wang Lin could clearly sense the thick aura of Qianfeng. Wang Lin, what do you mean by that? Zixin said coldly. Wang Lin looked at her calmly and said, Little one, when I was cultivating, you hadn't even been born. You were still a newborn, so keep quiet. Zixin's eyes flashed with cold light. She stood up, and the aura of the mid-infant metamorphosis stage wildly spread from her body. She stared at Wang Lin and said, "Wang Lin, back then you sent me into the spatial rift, almost causing my death. I've kept that in my heart ever since. You had high cultivation before, but now your billion soul banner has been destroyed, and your cultivation is only at the early infant metamorphosis stage. Killing you will be as easy as flipping my hand." Wang Lin coldly swept his gaze over Zixin, his eyes filled with a hint of mockery. He said indifferently, "What if I agree to become the Vermilion Bird Patriarch?" Upon hearing these words, Purple Core was momentarily stunned. She stared at Wang Lin, her heart struggling. After a brief moment, she lowered her head and remained silent. If Wang Lin truly became the Vermilion Bird Patriarch, then with the Vermilion Bird Seal, he could kill her without resistance. At this moment, she bitterly realized that, from beginning to end, she had always felt a sense of fear towards Wang Lin. Even now, having gained the cultivation of Qianfeng, that feeling still lingered. Emoji smiled faintly, looking at Wang Lin, and said, "Brother Denyo, do you wish to become the Vermilion Bird Patriarch?" Wang Lin replied calmly, "Messenger, even if I become the Vermilion Bird Patriarch, I will pass this title to him." Wang Lin pointed his right hand toward Zhou Wutai. Hearing this, Zhou Wutai shuddered, his gaze toward Wang Lin filled with deep gratitude. Emoji smiled slightly. In his view, the title of Vermilion Bird Patriarch was insignificant, given to anyone was fine, and it had nothing to do with him in the future. Instead, Wang Lin intrigued him. After a brief thought, Emoji raised his right hand and pointed at Zhou Wutai. Immediately, the heart-shaped crystal floating before him flashed and shot toward Zhou Wutai. Zhou Wutai's body trembled greatly. The heart-shaped crystal arrived like lightning, gradually sinking into his forehead. Remain in seclusion here for a year, comprehend the Vermilion Bird Seal, and from then on, you will be the 15th generation Vermilion Bird Patriarch. However, the seal on the star cultivation crystal hasn't been broken. This will do for now, Emoji said, and with a flick of his sleeve, both Yun Kazi and Purple Core vanished from the scene. At the same time, Zhou Wutai sank, gradually disappearing beneath the sea. Now, only Emoji and Wang Lin remained in this place. "Thank you." Wang Lin was silent for a moment before cupping his fist in gratitude. Emoji laughed heartily and said, "Brother Denyo, perhaps in the future, I may need your assistance. Do not refuse when the time comes. I must leave Vermilion Bird Star and return to the Cultivation Alliance. We will meet again if fate allows. Come, let us leave together." Wang Lin's eyes flickered, and he shook his head. "Messenger, there are still some matters I must handle here in the Vermilion Bird Tomb." Emoji gave a half-smile, nodded, then pressed his right hand forward. A red seal appeared before him. "Remember this mark. When you wish to leave, use your immortal power to condense the seal, and you will be able to depart." Emoji gave Wang Lin one last deep look, then turned and vanished into the void with a single step. Now, only Wang Lin was left. "I've obtained the life soul for both Muin and myself. The next Vermilion Bird Patriarch on this star will be Zhou Wutai. This person values gratitude, and I've done him a favor. Even if I leave, he will look after those connected to me. With that, my worries are laid to rest." This was why Wang Lin wanted Zhou Wutai to become the Vermilion Bird Patriarch, ensuring that there were no concerns left behind. Wang Lin remained silent for a moment, then his body moved, shooting toward the distance. Not long after, 3 black lights sped toward him from the horizon, transforming into 3 primary souls before him. The remnant soul of the Qilin was among them. A cold gleam flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. With a wave of his right hand, the soul banner appeared in his grasp, and with a sweep, he gathered the 3 primary souls within it. Yun Kazi really has some tricks up her sleeve. For primary souls came after me, and she managed to destroy one. She has already left the Vermilion Bird Tomb, but once I'm out, I will kill her. From the start, I had no enmity with her, but she has repeatedly provoked me. She even teamed up with Qianfeng to try and kill me. She cannot be left alive." Wang Lin's eyes flashed as his decision was made. As for the illusory scene with Lu Mei, it did not affect Wang Lin's resolve. In truth, as Lu Mei had said, Wang Lin's heart had no room for women, except for Li Muin. This trip to the Vermilion Bird Tomb has cost me dearly. The Billion Soul banner only has 3 primary souls left, the rest are all destroyed. The power of this banner has greatly diminished. But if I had enough souls, I could repair it. Unfortunately, wandering souls cannot merge with it. Otherwise, the repair would be much easier. The star cultivation crystal is of such great importance, used for the evolution of the extreme realm, which must have its flaws. The most urgent task now is to find Su Ligua and obtain that crescent blade. I must have it. Since releasing Su Ligua, Wang Lin had always sensed his presence. Now, after a brief moment of reflection, he pinpointed Su Ligua's location. He stepped forward and instantly transformed into a wisp of green smoke, drifting toward the distant horizon. The matters of the Vermilion Bird Tomb were now concluded. As for the Immortal Remnant clan, once Yunkazi emerged from the Vermilion Bird Tomb, the entire clan retreated, occupying a continent in the northwest of Vermilion Bird Star. There, they settled, avoiding contact with other cultivators. On Vermilion Bird Star, many cultivators lost their lives in this war. The sects of each cultivation nation were severely weakened, and a large number of disciples were recruited. Many who were not originally suited for cultivation were also taken in by the sections. Among them, there were a few individuals with exceptional talent, discovered by various sects and treated as treasures. They were rigorously trained, with the goal of becoming the backbone of their respective sections. At this moment, across the entire Vermilion Bird Star, there was only one cultivator at the early Ascension stage. This person was none other than the ancestral Patriarch of the Earth Soul sect. He remained in seclusion, uninterested in worldly matters. Although he harbored resentment, he had to accept that Zhao Ru, the emissary of the Cultivation Alliance, had been appointed as the next Vermilion Bird, and he dared not oppose it. 1 year later, Zhao Ru emerged from the Vermilion Bird Tomb. Although his cultivation was at the late-stage perfection of the spirit transformation, when combined with the Vermilion Bird Seal, he was more than enough to threaten cultivators in the infant metamorphosis stage. He became the lowest-ranking cultivator among all the titled cultivators. Perhaps aware of his own low cultivation, he immediately entered seclusion upon appearing, retreating to the Vermilion Bird Mountain. The entire Vermilion Bird Star displayed a long-awaited tranquility. Wang Lin. Lu Mei bit her lip, and her figure turned into a meteor, streaking across the sky like thunder. If it weren't for Master secretly giving me the 4th soul of the Soul Banner, when you and your 4 major souls pursued me, I would have certainly perished. A purple-gold glow flashed in Lu Mei's forehead, and a thin needle-like light flickered in the center of her brow. When we meet again, I will definitely not be in such a sorry state. Wang Lin, you will not recognize me. After the illusory heartless path comes the 10,000 illusions heavenly demon path. A cold gleam flashed in Lu Mei's eyes, and her figure disappeared into the starry sky. Lu Mei was not the only one leaving the Vermilion Bird Star. At this moment, in the vast expanse of the starry sky, another woman was speeding away. This woman, veiled in purple gauze, had a calm expression. She was none other than Xin. On the Vermilion Bird Star, within the borders of Chu Kingdom, at the Cloud Heaven sect. Inside the attic where Li Muan had once lived for years, sat a figure. This person wore white robes, his black hair simply tied up and hanging down behind his head. His appearance was unremarkable, yet he carried a peculiar aura that made him unforgettable after just one glance. His eyes were calm, like those of a child, black and white, but within them was a depth that made one lose themselves in their gaze. At this moment, his expression was serene as he sat, gazing out of the window. Outside the window, in the open space, a tiger lazily lay in the sun. Occasionally, it opened its tiger eyes, growled a few times, flipped over, and exposed its belly to the sunlight. Under the shade of the trees next to the tiger, a woman sat cross-legged. She had a pure and innocent appearance, radiating an even more alluring beauty due to her childlike innocence. As she sat there, it seemed as though she was regulating her breath. 2 white dragon-like cheeks spiraled out from her nostrils and swirled above her head. The man in the attic was none other than Wang Lin. A year ago, he had emerged from the Vermilion Bird Tomb and returned to Chu Kingdom. Upon arriving, he immediately entered seclusion, and had remained there for a full year. During this time, Wang Lin fully recovered from the injuries he sustained in the Vermilion Bird Tomb and made some progress in his cultivation. Although he had not reached the mid-infant metamorphosis stage, his stability in the early infant metamorphosis stage had greatly improved. 7 days ago, Zhao Ru from Vermilion Bird Nation sent him an invitation to attend his title ceremony, which Wang Lin politely declined. Zhao Ru, understanding that Wang Lin had severed ties, did not try to persuade him further. Instead, he made a vow that anyone connected to Wang Lin would remain safe for as long as Zhao Ru lived. Wang Lin glanced out the window, then withdrew his gaze. He tapped his storage pouch, and the immortal sword immediately flew out, hovering in front of him. As soon as the sword appeared, A crescent blade flew out from the storage pouch, circling around the immortal sword, looking as if it was delighted. "Master, this fourth has been tamed and listens to me well. Fourth, come greet the master." Su Ligua's voice came from within the immortal sword. Immediately after, a black mist poured out of the sword and materialized into Su Ligua's form, who now looked extremely pleased with himself. The crescent blade trembled, and dark blue mist emanated from it, forming the shape of a child. This child's face could not be clearly seen, but after appearing, he nodded toward Wang Lin and sent out a stiff divine sense, saying, "Greetings." Upon seeing this crescent blade, Wang Lin couldn't help but feel a deep respect for Su Ligua. When he first found Su Ligua in the Vermilion Bird Tomb, he had no idea what method Su Ligua had used, but it seemed that he had developed a close bond with this crescent blade. When the crescent blade saw Su Ligua preparing to leave, it immediately followed, which surprised Wang Lin. So far, Wang Lin had been unable to control the crescent blade or leave his divine sense on it. However, once Su Ligua was in danger, the crescent blade would immediately lend its assistance. With this, Su Ligua's pride increased many times over. If not for his fear of Wang Lin, knowing his life and death were in Wang Lin's hands, he might have already rebelled by now. Wang Lin knew that he was no match for the crescent blade in direct combat, and if they ever clashed, it would be extremely troublesome. Fortunately, for some unknown reason, the crescent blade was deeply attached to Su Ligua, allowing Wang Lin to indirectly control it. Over the past year, Wang Lin had also studied the crescent blade, trying to figure out who on Vermilion Bird Star possessed such a powerful life soul that could form this crescent blade. But all along, there had been no progress on the matter, and as time went on, Wang Lin simply stopped thinking about it. "Master, I'm taking old 4 out for a stroll," Su Ligua called out. Seeing Wang Lin nod, he immediately wrapped himself in his immortal sword and, turning into a streak of rainbow light, flashed out through the window. The crescent blade followed closely behind, emitting a sharp, resonating hum. In the blink of an eye, the sword and blade vanished into the sky, their destination unknown. Wang Lin touched his storage pouch. Before leaving, there were still things he needed to do. Many of the magical treasures inside required another round of refining. After all, the path ahead on Destiny Star was shrouded in fog, and who knew what might lie ahead? As he pondered, a defiant voice echoed from the void and drilled into Wang Lin's ears. "Wang Lin, I found something about that matter you asked me to look into. In a village called Mulberry Garden outside Phoenix City in the Chu Kingdom. Next time don't bother me with trivial stuff like this. I'm having way too much fun playing Prince right now to deal with your problems. Just let me know when you're leaving, and we'll go together." Situnan's voice was filled with laughter as it faded away. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Wang Lin's lips. After leaving the Vermilion Bird Tomb, he had reunited with Situnan. The two had planned to return to the Chu Kingdom together and depart after taking care of some lingering matters. But halfway there, Situnan had caught sight of a mortal imperial palace. The moment he laid eyes on it, his obsession with playing royalty was reignited. He flat out refused to go back with Wang Lin and instead transformed himself into a noble, somehow managing, who knows how, the very next day to be granted the title of Prince equal to heaven by the Emperor. Since then, he'd been living a carefree and joyous life. But he hadn't forgotten about leaving and had told Wang Lin to find him before departing. Taking a deep breath, Wang Lin stood up, pushed open the door, and walked outside. The moment he stepped out, a young woman meditating beneath the shade of the trees opened her beautiful eyes. Upon seeing Wang Lin, she beamed and ended her breathing exercises, cheerfully calling out, "Uncle, look how my cultivation's coming along. I've already reached the second layer of chi condensation." The girl was none other than Zhao Ru. A year ago, after Wang Lin arrived in the Chu Kingdom, he had immediately summoned the treasure pagoda and brought Zhao Ru and Little White out from within. The food he had left in the pagoda last time had been more than enough to sustain Zhao Ru. Once out, Zhao Ru had begged Wang Lin to teach her cultivation. Unable to refuse, he had handed over the chi condensation mantra. Now, the once small child standing before him had grown into a graceful young woman. Looking at her, Wang Lin couldn't help but think of Li Muan. "Uncle, what's wrong?" Zhao Ru stepped forward, puzzled by the look in Wang Lin's eyes. The memories of Li Muan in Zhao Ru's mind had already been erased by Wang Lin. Naturally, she knew nothing about her, and as for Little White, he wouldn't have told her anything either. Wang Lin gently brushed her silky hair, a rare look of kindness appearing in his eyes. Though his appearance wasn't much older than Zhao Ru's, the warmth in his gaze came naturally, like that of a true elder. Uncle's getting old. Seeing you reminds me of someone from long ago, Wang Lin said softly. Zhao Ru giggled, her laughter as crisp as wind chimes. Uncle, you're not old at all. Just the other day, a new junior brother secretly asked me if you were my older brother. Wang Lin smiled faintly. This girl, she had been meditating the entire day just 2 days ago. There was no such junior brother. She was clearly just trying to comfort him. Uncle has been cultivating for nearly 600 years now. How could I not be old? Wang Lin sighed, a trace of melancholy flickering in his eyes. In those 600 years, he had experienced far too much. From an unknown mortal, he had step-by-step climbed to where he was now, someone capable of influencing the selection of the Vermilion Bird Patriarch. Sometimes, when he looked back, it all felt like a dream. 6 centuries of cultivation had brought him deep insight and unwavering resolve. Ru'er, do you still remember your parents? Wang Lin looked at Zhao Ru. Her body trembled slightly, and a look of confusion crossed her eyes. After a moment, she lowered her head and softly said, just some vague impressions. Wang Lin gazed at her, his expression tinged with guilt. If it weren't for him, Zhao Ru should now be with her parents, living a warm, ordinary childhood, not this life, where her only companion was a tiger. Ru'er, Uncle is taking you home, Wang Lin said gently. With a flick of his sleeve, an auspicious cloud materialized beneath their feet, lifting Zhao Ru into the sky as it soared off into the distance. Little White rolled over, abandoning his sunbathing. Letting out a roar, he leapt into the air and followed behind. Uncle, did you find my parents? On the cloud, Zhao Ru bit her lower lip and asked in a low voice. I did. Ru'er, once you see your parents, you must fulfill your filial duty. Remember this, filial piety is the first virtue of a person. If you cannot show filial devotion, you're not worthy of being called human. As Wang Lin spoke, he seemed to see the faces of his own parents. Zhao Ru nodded, looked at Wang Lin, then hesitated before saying, Uncle, didn't you say you'd take me away from Vermilion Birdstar? Wang Lin looked at her, sighed lightly, and said, Ru'er, the bond between us has come to its end. Uncle. Zhao Ru's body trembled, her face changed color, her eyes turned slightly red, and tears welled up in her eyes. Don't say too much, Wang Lin said in a low voice. His feet on the auspicious cloud sped up, and he swiftly disappeared into the distance. Little White roared behind him, leaping into the air again and again. Anger flashed in its eyes as it thought, Grandpa Tiger isn't running fast, but if he thinks he can shake me off, that's impossible. Even if Grandpa Tiger spits blood, he will still follow. It was a warm spring morning, and the village's houses had thin smoke rising from their chimneys. Occasionally, the sound of dogs barking and children playing could be heard. At the 5th house from the east side of the village, a modest mud brick house, an elderly woman was squatting in the kitchen, starting a fire to cook. Her figure appeared somewhat hunched, marked by the years, and smoke rose from the firewood. She coughed a few times before hastily using a bamboo fan to disperse the smoke. Ru's mother. A weak voice called from the room beside the kitchen. The woman put down the fan, wiped her hands on her apron, and hurried out of the kitchen to the room where the voice came from. She pushed open the door and saw an elderly man lying on the bed. His eyes were deeply sunken, and his face was covered with deep wrinkles. The man was nothing but skin and bones, his eyes dull and lifeless. The woman approached the bed and looked at the man. Tears streamed down her face. Husband, is there anything you'd like to eat? The man lifted his right hand, and the woman quickly moved forward to help him sit up. Ru's mother, I had a dream last night. I dreamed our daughter came back. The man's eyes, dull as they were, suddenly seemed to gleam with a flicker of light. Our daughter, she's coming back. The woman couldn't stop her tears from falling. She whispered, yes, she's coming back soon. I regret it. I shouldn't have let that Taoist take our child away. It's been nearly 20 years, and now we don't even know how she's doing. The man's old age became more evident. The woman wiped away her tears and softly said, it's okay. Our daughter is blessed. She must be safe and sound. The man and woman were Zhao Ru's parents. Years ago, during the war between the Immortal Remnant clan and the cultivators, they had to move and settle here. They were not affected by the war. However, the two elderly parents had always been concerned about Zhao Ru. Many years ago, Zhao Ru had been taken away by a Taoist. This event had always been a thorn in their hearts. The constant calling and longing had made that thorn sharper and harder, and every time it pricked them, it caused even more pain. Zhao Ru's father had been suffering from this matter, unable to get over it. He had become bedridden, losing weight day after day. The entire family had been supported by Zhao Ru's mother, a simple housewife, who held the family together. But in the dead of night, she would still cry and whisper Zhao Ru's childhood nickname. "Our daughter will come back," she said, wiping away her tears. "Didn't you say you had a dream? That dream must be real." Sigh. Zhao Ru's father sighed deeply. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly fixed on the door, his body frozen, unmoving. The woman froze in surprise and quickly turned to look in the direction her husband was staring at. As soon as she saw it, she began to tremble. At the door stood a woman, her beauty striking, with long flowing hair. She resembled Zhao Ru, though her appearance was somewhat blurry, like the shadow of the Zhao Ru they remembered. "You." The woman hesitated, speaking softly. "Mother." Tears instantly streamed from the woman's eyes. She hurried over, kneeling beside her mother and crying out loud. "Ru'er, it's really Ru'er. She's back. Husband, Ru'er is back." The woman exclaimed with excitement, tears streaming down her face as she embraced the girl, crying uncontrollably. Zhao Ru's father seemed to suddenly gain an overwhelming strength. He managed to sit up on the bed and looked at Zhao Ru, tears flowing down his face. He muttered, "Heaven has opened its eyes. Heaven has opened its eyes. My daughter is back." Outside the house, Wang Lin sighed softly. His heart was filled with guilt towards this couple. With a wave of his hand, a flash of spiritual light disappeared into the room, silently entering the bodies of Zhao Ru's parents. Zhao Ru's father's chronic illness vanished, and vitality instantly returned to his body. Zhao Ru's mother experienced the same. "Ru'er, uncle is leaving," Wang Lin said after a brief silence, turning to leave. His figure seemed lonely and desolate, fading into the distance. Inside the house, Zhao Ru seemed to sense something. She lifted her head and gazed out the window, watching the lonely figure gradually fade away. "Uncle, in this life, will there ever be another chance to meet you?" Zhao Ru thought, her heart filled with sorrow. In her heart, Wang Lin's figure weighed more than her parents, for she had always been with Wang Lin since she was young. "Uncle, I will continue to cultivate and keep striving until I can leave this vermilion bird star. I will come, find you, and at that time, Little Ru will no longer be your burden." Wang Lin had left. Little White let out a low growl outside the house, its tiger-like eyes staring at the residence where Zhao Ru was, showing signs of reluctance. After a moment, it gave a loud roar, leaped into the air, and turned into a streak of white light, vanishing. The roar immediately stunned all the villagers inside the cottage. But when they came out to check, there was nothing to be found. However, for an entire month, the chickens, dogs, and livestock in the village dared not leave their pens, trembling all day as though they had been severely frightened. In Chu Kingdom, outside the Cloud Heaven sect, Wang Lin appeared with a flash. "Taiyan, come out and meet me." Wang Lin's voice echoed across the entire Cloud Heaven sect. A long rainbow shot out from within the sect and transformed into an elder 10 yards in front of Wang Lin. This person was none other than Taiyan. Taiyan had already reached the spirit transformation stage, and Chu Kingdom had also advanced to the level of a 4th-tier cultivation nation. "Taiyan is here." Taiyan cupped his fist respectfully and stood in place. He held Wang Lin in the highest regard. In Vermilion Bird Star, the name Wang Lin was a legend. Wang Lin had once been remarkable, slaying the red butterfly, defeating Qian Feng, shocking Lu Mei, repelling Xin, leaving Vermilion Bird, and with a single word, determining the future of the 15 generations of Vermilion Bird descendants, including Zhou Wutai. All of this had been passed down among the cultivators of Vermilion Bird Star, and nearly everyone knew of it. In Taiyan's heart, Wang Lin was like the heavens, his words were like divine decree, and there was no room for resistance. Wang Lin flicked his right hand, and a storage pouch flew out, landing in Taiyan's hands. "Give this to Zhao Ru if she can cultivate to the nascent soul stage on her own in this lifetime. If not, forget it. There's a seal on it. It's simple and easy to break. Just put your mind into it, and you will surely find a way." Wang Lin's voice was calm and emotionless. Taiyan immediately shuddered and quickly said, "Taiyan dares not. This item is something you gave to Zhao Ru, and even if I die, I will keep it safe." Wang Lin looked at Taiyan and nodded. "You'd better not let greed cloud your judgment, or you will suffer the consequences. Remember that." Taiyan's heart trembled, and he kept the words firmly in his mind. He dared not disobey Wang Lin, nor did he dare to doubt him. This was a lesson he would never forget for the rest of his life. Wang Lin gave one last deep glance at the surrounding land, sighed lightly, took a step forward, and transformed into a wisp of green smoke, vanishing with the wind. Tai Yin, drenched in sweat, carefully placed the storage pouch away and returned to Cloud Heaven's sect. In the far north of Vermilion Birdstar, where the Snow Domain Nation once stood, the cold winds here were bone-chilling, strong enough to freeze any living being in their path. Here, at some unknown time, white roses had begun to grow on the icy ground. These roses were not red but pure white. Petals of white roses bloomed in the harsh winds, their fragrance swirling around the area. To the east of this land stood an icy valley. Inside, a solitary blue rose was blooming, proudly standing tall. It grew amidst the cold winds, with ice crystals for branches, flourishing in the valley like a proud young woman, exuding a sense of self-appreciation amidst her loneliness. One day, a figure appeared outside the valley. The man was dressed in white, his gaze calm. As he entered the valley, the blue rose released a fragrant aroma that quickly filled the air, enveloping the entire valley. It was as if a young maiden was dancing gracefully within the valley, creating a mysterious atmosphere. The man in white stood quietly beside the blue rose, watching it for a long time, and then he gently bent down, plucked the rose, and turned to leave. As he walked away, the white roses on the icy ground began to wither and disappear, as if their purpose had been merely to accompany the blue rose. Now that the blue rose was taken, they had lost their meaning, fading away quietly. In Zhao Kingdom, at the foot of Hangyue Sect Mountain, in the Wang family's ancestral residence, a man in white appeared silently within the ancestral shrine. He gazed quietly at the rows of ancestral tablets, and his eyes eventually stopped at the 2 tablets at the very top. He stared silently for a long time, and time passed slowly, yet he did not move. He stood there for an entire day and night. The next morning, when the servants arrived to clean, they were startled to see the man in white. As they opened their mouths to call out, they suddenly collapsed, fainting on the spot. The man remained silent, his eyes full of memories. He stood there for 3 full days and nights. As the days passed, the look of remembrance in his eyes grew stronger, and 2 tears began to fall from the corners of his eyes. On the 3rd day, the man moved for the first time, slowly kneeling on the ground, bowing deeply. "Father. Mother. I must leave." The man muttered softly, his gaze filled with determination. He stood up, turned, and walked out of the shrine. Outside the ancestral hall, a large crowd had already gathered, densely packed together. Among them were men and women, old and young, all dressed in magnificent attire, their faces radiating good fortune. There were also a few cultivators present, though their cultivation levels weren't particularly high. They all exuded remarkable elegance. At the forefront stood none other than Wang Zhuo. A day earlier, Wang Zhuo had felt a strange sensation, as though a call from the unknown was summoning him. This led him to the ancestral hall. Once there, he could sense Wang Lin's presence. He realized that Wang Lin had deliberately let his aura remain unmasked, and the call he felt was a manifestation of Wang Lin's inner thoughts. Thus, he came, and he had ordered the entire Wang family, every direct descendant, no matter what they were doing at the time, to stop everything immediately. He had cultivators go to bring them here, all of them escorted to this place.